A lot of senior product managers are stuck in their job because they're frequently working on those repetitive, boring, low visibility role every single day, but never getting opportunities to be presented in front of a large audience and show their strategic thinking and working on high impact product jobs out there. This is a common struggle for a lot of senior product managers. But today, we had a pleasure to invite the ex-CEO of Tech Goes Home, Daniel Noyes. He's going to share with us the secrets of getting into the leadership role in the product organization as well as in a large nonprofit organization. Make sure to stay until the end of the video where we're going to talk about the proven secret to enhance your product leadership and the visibilities in your organization. Hey guys, this is Dr. Nancy Lee, a direct product featured in Forbes. I've helped thousands of people land the dream PM job offer in FAANG companies and unicorn startups and continue to get promoted as a product leader. In this channel, we talk about tech trends and free product management training. Like and subscribe and check out new video every Tuesday. Hi Dan, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Oh, Dr. Nancy Lee, it's so great and amazing to see you. We've known each other for many years now, so I'm honored to be on this pod.
Yeah, I've been wanting to reconnect with you. I believe we met more than 10 years ago at Harvard Square, where you were telling me about Tech Goes Home, all the nonprofit initiatives. I'm so glad to see how much Tech Goes Home has gone through the fast innovation and growth process.
What do you think about just how the world has changed since we sat and had iced tea in Cambridge over 10 years ago? I mean, we survived a pandemic, so a lot has changed in many ways.
Yeah, exactly. And now I moved to Miami already. And also today I have my own startup and so excited. And so Daniel, can you quickly introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. As you said, my name it's Dan Noyes. Out of college, I went down and worked for Congress for a while. And then I ran away yelling and screaming as fast as I could after a few years. And I wanted something more hands-on. And then I moved back to New England, which is where I'm from, and decided to work in Boston Public Schools for about a decade, and loved almost every moment of that. Loved the kids, didn't love the challenges at times, but it certainly was a huge education for me working in schools. And then after that, we had a program in the middle school I was working at that we really wanted to take across the city and eventually across the state, and that was Tech Goes Home. And so in 2010, I left the middle school and joined TGH, and then just recently, in the last couple of months, I moved on from TGH, and that's where we are today.
Yeah, Dan, and actually, your journey is very inspiring. You start working for Congress, the government, and then start to become a teacher. And then you join a nonprofit and you're working for Tech Goes Home for almost 20 years, right? And nowadays, you're already a CEO of Tech Goes Home for many years. And yeah, so can you quickly tell us all the motivation behind working on Tech Goes Home's mission? And because I personally recently started my own nonprofit, which was given product management education and AI education for kids from underserved communities, I understand how hard it is and actually to working on nonprofit, because actually people working on nonprofit will preferably work longer hours and also give away our own money. And also lots of employees working for nonprofit also get relatively lower compared to working for all the for-profit companies. So there must be some motivation behind why people join nonprofit. Can you tell us why this work is so personal to you that drives you to work for the same company and really leading a big organization as the CEO of a nonprofit?
Let me just say up front, you're so right. Is that anyone who goes into nonprofit work should go in with their eyes wide open. It's like we nonprofits don't pay what Bain Capital pays. Yeah. You don't get the same benefits that you might get at a giant Fortune 500 company. But there are other things that you get. And this actually ties in, I think, really well with that question, Nancy, so when I have a 14-year-old daughter who is wonderful and great and perfectly healthy and on level academically and everything. But when she was 2, or up until she was 2, she refused to speak. She just was like, I'm not talking. And so we had all the early intervention work, and we had all the specialists, and we had all, the experts, and they were doing all these things, and it just wasn't working. And I so appreciated their work. It just wasn't working. And you gotta remember, this is gonna be hard for young people, but you gotta remember back, like this is before like the iPad was a thing. Like, and so
Yeah.
it was recently out and the app stores were pretty new. And I was like, listen, I'm gonna give this a try with my kid. I
Hmm.
have the money and the privilege to be able to buy an iPad. I can buy the apps. We're going to try it. And within months, she was talking because,
Wow.
there was a curated set of apps that I found through, different lists and help from experts. And she was able to use them nightly. Like instead of like, reading the typical book when you go to sleep, we'd pull out the iPad and it would be a book, but it would be
Hmm.
interactive that required you to make noises and say things. And so it was incredibly successful. And to the heart of your question though, is, well, how does this really hit TGH? I had long thoughts about how the privilege that I have to be able to buy that device, to be able to use that with my child, that my job allows me to be there at bedtime. Just acknowledging that there's so many families that Tech Goes Home serves and other organizations serve that don't have that privilege. And so we said, all right, well, let's start an early childhood program. So
Hmm.
we picked a preschool in Roxbury, and which is a neighborhood of Boston. We had one course. We had 19 families, and then within 12 months of that, we had 10 courses and almost 200 families running through
Wow.
a iPad based course for kids between the ages of 2 and 4. And so when you think about that motivation, sure,
Hmm.
it'd be nice to make what Bain Capital pays. Don't get me wrong. I would love to have that salary.
Yeah.
But to know that I was able to take something I learned because of my incredible daughter
Hmm.
and transfer that to those that are on, the more marginalized side of our society. I mean, it's an honor. It's a privilege to do this job because of the impact that my work can have on people in the community. So that's one of the reasons, one of the many reasons it's very personal for me.
Yeah, as a mom of two young children, I have 1 year old and 3 year old right now. Very, very busy mom of two. And I can imagine how stressful it is for the parents to seeing your 2 year old daughter doesn't want to speak. And then see all other kids just making different sound or start to say dada mama. She's basically doesn't want to communicate. And then you have to push through different ways and eventually identify iPad. Just out of curiosity, have you figured out why iPad works? Today lots of people are like, oh, we shouldn't introduce iPad early digital. I think people just have too much digital devices nowadays. Did you figure out why iPad is at the time is better for human intervention, or at least works? Human intervention you tried. Is there any reasons behind how technology is impacting kids development?
So the way it was explained to me, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an early education expert. The way it was explained to me is that one of the reasons that she refused to talk is because she was afraid she'd get it wrong.
Uh-huh.
That she would, like, if she was going to say the word apartment, she was afraid she would say it wrong and didn't want to be wrong,
Mm-hmm.
especially in front of people.
Yeah.
Now, when it came to a device in front of you that's asking you to say the same word, she doesn't care about the device thinking, judging her or thinking that
Mm.
it's wrong. So what we found very quickly is, compared to when we're sitting with her, like with flashcards or something like that, she was much more willing to draft speak, to
Nice.
say things. I don't know if that's the right term or not, but she would say words that would be wrong, but then practice it. And then something as simple as she loved the bells and whistles within the apps that were like, if you said it right or you hit the right thing, fireworks go off, or you're into point and you get like an ice cream cone on your screen. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think the gamification and just the cute motivation certainly helped. But I think a lot of it was that she felt more comfortable interacting essentially with herself, because
Yeah.
that's what it was. The iPad's not thinking; it's doing what you tell it to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that makes so much sense because I'm also taking parenting classes right now. It's actually dealing with 2 year old toddlers. It's very challenging. One
can
of the
be.
key or terrible
I've
to
been
horrible
there,
three.
Nancy. I've been there, Nancy. Yep.
Yeah, one of the key concept the parenting class I took saying that make children feel safe. That might hit those elements, make them feel safe so that they feel comfortable and safe from device instead of getting judged by adults who are way more mature, better than them. Now, yeah, and I can tell how much is actually like changing people's life nowadays. So then Let's continue with Tech Goes Home topic. You touched something earlier saying that a lot of family doesn't have the privileges to get all the digital devices years ago. And right now, there's still a lot of people out there. I think there's a number. I believe when we connected and also when I read on the Tech Goes Home like annual report, can you remind me what's a percentage of people in the areas you serve, they still do not get those kind of digital or support nowadays? Like
Yeah, I mean
40 something, right?
the numbers are staggering, and then just an addition to them is they're incredibly racist in that if you look at all of the divides that exist, if you look at them demographically, it's just terrible. So, for example, a big
Mm-hmm.
topic right now is telemedicine. It's like we're
Mm-hmm.
all, I don't know about you, but I had a telemedicine visit yesterday, and we all do that. However,
Yeah.
the stubborn fact is not all of us can do that. So if you look at people on Medicaid, for example,
Mm-hmm.
um, 30% of white older adults are not able to do it. So 70% can. So that's not too bad. There's still 30% that can.
Yeah,
But
30% still high.
60% of Black seniors and 71% of Latin seniors are not able to do telemedicine because they don't have the skills and they don't have the hardware.
Mm.
And like when you look at who most needs these resources, it's the people who are least likely to have them. And so like the mission of Tech Goes Home and other orgs is to end this divide so that, if you're a senior living in Dorchester or you're a senior living in Miami, you should be able to have a telemedicine visit with your doctor, regardless of your income,
Yeah.
regardless of your living situation. And we're not there yet. And those stats are across the board. It's if you, for example, are a Black student in the United States, you are twice as likely not to have home internet than if you're a white student.
Mm.
Like one of the really troubling stats for the future is that 92% of jobs right now, 92% of jobs in the US
Mm-hmm.
require digital skills,
Yeah,
some form of digital skills.
exactly.
And yet, massive numbers of people, especially in marginalized populations, do not have those skills.
Mm-hmm.
So we're at this point now where you have a generation of people that need jobs, and you've got a generation of jobs where they can't fill them because they don't have the skills necessary. And so
Huh.
Tech Goes Home's mission is really to bridge that gap, is
Mm-hmm.
to say, okay, we can't teach you to be a coder. We can't teach you to run a forklift or whatever it might be, but we can give you those basic skills up front that are necessary to get there.
Yeah, those numbers are shocking. I can't believe it's between 60-70% for those seniors, for more minority groups not able to even get
Yeah,
access to
you
those
got about
like internet.
there's a lot of estimates on how many people in the US don't have internet, but the number that seems to be most agreed to is 70 million people in the United States do not have internet access.
That's
70
crazy.
million. I mean
You would imagine
imagine
this by default nowadays, but
imagine if we had said 70 million people in the US don't have clean drinking water, or 70 million people in the US don't have electricity.
mm-hmm.
I mean, it would be a major emergency.
Yeah.
But I think, unfortunately, too many people in our society still think of the internet as a luxury, when in
Mm-hmm.
fact it's more critical today than it was yesterday, and it's not going back. I mean, you need the internet for everything.
Yeah.
Um, During COVID, you needed internet for unemployment benefits.
Totally.
And it's just
Totally.
like, if you didn't know how to do that, like, what were you supposed to do? And so that's
Yeah.
why there's organizations out there trying to fight back.
Totally. So, Dan, can you let the audience know what the mission of Tech Goes Home, so that you kind of allude to it, and I think lots of my audience and not in nonprofit space. So, can you
Sure.
tell them more regarding what's the mission of Tech Goes Home and how it started and where it is right now?
Sure, sure. So it started 25 years ago, actually, before there was anything called a digital divide, long before touchscreen iPhones or any of that.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it was a group of families at a school in Boston who saw that their kids had a whole lot of stuff at home, a whole lot of tech, and kids that didn't have as much didn't have anything. And they said, this isn't right. We should do something about this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it started very small, and basically like 37 people that first year got some equipment and got some training. And fast forward till today, when in 2024, over 6,000 people received new computers, internet access, and digital life skills training to help those individuals achieve whatever goals they've set for themselves. And I think that right there, if I could for a second, is just the magic sauce of this program. I think you can give out a machine, you can give out internet, and I think people should do that. The really important step is, what do you do with it and why? Because it's like, we don't want to give out machines, that are going to sit there and collect dust. The whole point is, okay, you are unemployed. If you have tech and internet, how can you become employed? Or we talked earlier, you can't connect to your doctor. How do you do that? Your children is struggling with grades. How does tech fix that? You want to go to college. How do you do that? You need to find housing. How do you do that? One of the things I would challenge your listeners to think about for a minute is, imagine that you want to make any change in your life, job, house, travel, whatever it might be. Try doing it without the internet.
Impossible.
And then imagine that there's millions of people in this country who just don't have that option. I mean, this is such a foreign concept, but there's so many people in this country who don't know what Google is.
Really?
And I think we are really missing out on a huge opportunity, because just some of these basic skills open up so many doors for people, to employment, to health, to connection, to community, to you name it. I mean, this is why Tech Goes Home runs its courses in libraries and community centers and churches and schools. And we ran a course once in the basement of a church rectory. I mean, We'll go wherever the need is. One of my favorite courses that ever ran was at this incredible women's day shelter called Women's Lunch Place, which is on Newbury Street in Boston. It's a day shelter for women, and they basically taught the women how to use Etsy to sell the incredible art things that they would just make as a just for fun. And all of a sudden, women were now boxing up the sweaters they were making and selling them and making money. I mean, that's just stuff like that is just so amazing.
Yeah, basically you teach them those digital skills to really create a business or earn extra income, or even get access to services like telemedicine, those kind of like basic stuff. Most people thought it was normal. Now millions of people does not even have those basic internet skills.
Well, I think about, and let's drive this right back to us, Nancy. I think about your catalog of information that you've provided for free online. I mean, anyone who's listening to this right now, I'm guessing, has gone through your YouTube history.
Yeah.
And it's just like, there's such a wealth of information in there that is not accessible to someone who doesn't have access. And so it's something as simple as, okay, now I can go listen to Nancy on this podcast, and it can help me be the best, whatever it is I want to be. Yeah. And that, I mean, it's life-changing. It really is life-changing. And when you go into the places where our courses are, I'm not at Tech Goes Home anymore, but when Tech Goes Home courses run, it is inspirational. I mean, you see people there who it's hard for them to get there. Many of them are working many jobs, but they sit. It's a 15-hour course. They often go more than 15 hours. They always tell us they want more.
Wow.
Like, they want to learn because they know it will benefit them and their family. And it's inspiring.
Yeah,
totally. That's why I said it's a privilege to be in this role, because it really is a privilege to be in this role.
Totally. And it's also like, I'm so lucky I discovered Tech Goes Home over 10 years, and we have been supporters and also donors to Tech Goes Home. It was because
Thank you very much, Nancy. Yes, you have.
Yeah, and all the impacts you guys made. I also do you know that every single year? Yeah, I think we'll send you guys all the video campaign we ran. Every single year we do 1-1 donation matches during the holiday seasons and Thanksgiving. Anybody who enroll in our program, we give donation matches to all your nonprofit. It was because lots of people, they thought all my audience are in tech. Literally, I have a lot of audience currently listen to us. They're already senior product manager at Google. I have lots of chief product officers getting coaching from me, and of course some entry level product managers as well all out there. We thought by default people should be able to know the basic digital skills, and however there are so many new ways we can serve people. And thank you for bringing different side of stories and aspect for all my audience.
No, it's great. And I would say to those especially those senior level officers at a Google or something like that, who are struggling now to find employees. It's just the reason you're struggling is that you're not pulling from the entire population. It's just you've ignored, or maybe that's too powerful a word, but you haven't seen a huge section of people who are able and willing and excited to do this work. It's just they haven't had that initial training that they need. I'm convinced. I think about it's kind of a meta thought, but I think about like how many Albert Einsteins have we lost because of poverty, or how many Neil Armstrongs, or pick whoever you want, that just were brilliant people, but couldn't get out of the cycles of poverty because no one reached in and said, "Hey, let me give you a hand, and let me help activate the power that I know is within you." And then, so I think more and more orgs and more conversations like this too, I think are important to get that done.
Yeah, exactly. That's why like 20% of my content is also about like inspiring content and all the nonprofit related content, because I believe there's a mission beyond what I do day to day for Financial Accelerator. And but
Mm-hmm.
now let's also go back to the main topic, which is leadership. So the reason I brought many CEOs here on my show, I brought a VP of product from Google and all the very senior people, was because I wanted to share the importance of the leadership and how to manage a team effectively. And Daniel, I know you've been working for Tech Goes Home for like almost 20 years, starting from yourself, like volunteer and officer, entry level. Now you're CEO and managing a large nonprofit company. And you also grew, you told me earlier, you grew a company and also downsized the company, and also yourself. It's the same level as other CEO of any of the tech companies. But the key part is that how would you lead a team more efficiently? I think that's the hard part. Can you share with us regarding how you really lead a team and what's the leadership? Or what's it look like?
Oh gosh, you're so right. It's so hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's challenging because if you are successful at building a diverse team of learners, diverse team of workers, like the different modes of thought and different backgrounds, everyone's not the same, and that is a great challenge, and it's also a hard challenge. So for me, and again, before I say this, there's a billion books written on this,
Yeah,
and
about
smarter
leadership.
people than me, I'm sure, could say, I can just tell what works for me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure someone else there will kind of laugh at what I say. But I mean, for me, it starts with being inclusive. That, trying to lead from on high without including the voices of the people you serve, of your team, of the community. It's a huge mistake. I don't think you will not achieve the success you want to have unless you are inclusive of those around you. And now, what groups you're inclusive of depends on what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So in a nonprofit space, you need to be inclusive of the people you're trying to serve, for example. You need to be
Mm-hmm.
inclusive of the staff. If you're a project manager and you're rolling on a product, well, you better damn well be inclusive of the people that might want to buy this product. Like,
Yeah.
do people want this? I think the second part of that is, and these are different, is you need to listen. So
Mm-hmm.
it's one thing to put a group of people in the room, ask a bunch of questions, and ignore them. And unfortunately, on the nonprofit side, that does happen quite a bit, especially with governments. I find is that they'll have
Mm-hmm.
community meetings where government people go, and people's minds are already made up about what they're going to do, and they're just doing
Uh,
it because they have to go into the community. And you really need to listen. You need to
mm-hmm.
listen and take in what is said. It does not mean you're going to agree with what is said, but no one will be able to tell you that you didn't listen. Someone,
Mm-hmm.
and I think if you're a good leader, someone walking away from you should be able to say, he didn't agree with me, but I felt heard. And I think that's huge.
Oh,
And the
true.
last piece, you need to act. And I think this is something that is often really hard for CEOs to do, especially in the environments that we're in now, is you need to
Mm-hmm.
act. It's like you're there to make complex, hard decisions. If your job all day is making easy decisions, you're not doing a good job. The easy decisions should be made by the people that you hired to make the easy decisions. Only the
Yeah.
hard decisions should come to the CEO's desk. And so you've got to act. And in that, you can never let the perfect get in the way of the good. And I know that's a
Mm.
cliche, but it's so true. I find it especially in nonprofit space where you're making decisions where sometimes groups get left out. But for the
Mm.
health and sustainability of an organization, that's what has to happen. Or
Mm.
sometimes an employee's pet project that they've been working on for a while just isn't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why you're CEO. This is why you make the big bucks, is because the level of responsibility for acting, it falls on you. So those are kind of like three high level things. I would encourage people to do an Amazon search or something. I'm sure you can find 150 books on different opinions, but those are mine.
Yeah, so I want to dive deeper a little bit regarding the second aspect. May people feel heard? I think you said something very literally bright on my mind as you said it. You said their response is, even if you didn't do, I disagree with you and didn't do what I suggested, but I felt hurt. How to make people actually feel heard, especially you didn't accept their suggestions. Can you give us specific examples or tactics?
Sure. There's something called mirroring,
Mm,
and I find this to be incredibly helpful, not only for this purpose, but also because my
mm,
brain is mush and I often forget things. So, Nancy, if you were to come to me and pitch me on an idea of launching a widget, I would then basically mirror back what you said. I would say, hey, Nancy, I just want to make sure I heard everything you said. You said A, B, C, D,
oh,
E. And then you could say, yes, but you missed this. And so I could say, all right, basically confirming that you and I have a complete understanding of what is being said. That
mm,
way, you're not going to walk away and say, oh, he doesn't get what I want, or he doesn't understand what is said, or he didn't listen to me. It takes time because it's not just a quick. No, it takes time, and it's often a one-on-one thing. But I think it's very valuable to ensure that two people completely understand what's being said.
mm-hmm,
And then, it's up to the CEO or whoever's the decider to internalize that. Oh, I will say that when you do that act of mirroring, I think
mm-hmm.
it's harder to ignore what someone said because you end up saying it yourself. And
Yeah.
so it gets in your brain. And again, you still might disagree with it or you still might go a different direction. But the other person, you know, depending on who they are, obviously, should feel like they were heard.
Wow, this is very powerful tactics actually. Actually was yesterday, Monday, I just had my feedback session with my student, and actually inside of my company, we serve literally thousands of students. Now I do monthly feedback session on different topics, and there are people coming in and providing me feedback. Of course, not everything we can implement for all the feedback, but you're right. The best way is to, you said this is what I heard, and continue conversation. And then they might feel like, yes, I was heard. And then they also have empathy in terms of, yeah, Dr. Nancy, a list of 20 different things you need to work on. And my suggestions maybe is lower on the list, but she understood that's necessary. She's working on it. There's a backlog of things, and I was heard. Wow, that's a very powerful tactic. Thank you, Daniel. Which also lead me to my next specific question. Do you think leadership skills can be taught, or is based on exercise and practice, or people need to take training to really learn how to become a good leader? So what always take to become a good leader, and what specific steps they need to take?
What a fantastic question. I
Mm.
love this. I feel like, Nancy, we could have a 12-hour podcast just about this one question. I
Episode number 2 coming out. Hey guys, we'd love to have a deep dive. Unique comment to this podcast or video, whatever you're watching, and let me know. Episode number 2, part 2. I can do part 2. So let's give an overview now. How?
I I think yes, it can be taught. I would say not everyone can be receptive to that teaching, but I think it can be taught. And I think I am an example of that because I don't think I displayed great leadership skills very early on, especially in the school environments I was in. Like I didn't have the tactics. I didn't have the patience. I didn't have the skills there. And I can think of a number of examples of that happening. And one of them was actually when I was in DC, someone they wanted to update the website, and this is in the '90s, so updating a website was a thing. Like it wasn't just hold it in front of AI and it does it for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a web expert, but somehow this got put on my plate, and so I was going back and forth with interns and blah 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 blah, and finally it was ugly and bad, and it was just not good, and I kept blaming other people for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, oh, it's her problem because she couldn't do that. It's his problem because of this. And finally, it dawned on me in that moment. It was just like, no, this is my fault. Like
Mm-hmm.
I might not be fully, it's not. I didn't do the design here. I didn't do that, but I'm responsible for this.
Sure.
And that hit me hard. And it's something that I think every leader struggles with is when your team that you've hired,
Yeah.
that you supervise, that you put if you're the leader, everyone on that team is there because of you. And so they might mess up. They might drop a grant, or they might screw up a product launch, or whatever it might be. And yeah, there might be consequences for it. A person might get fired, or they might not get a promotion, or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, you need to take responsibility for that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that is something to be learned. I also think it's critical to being a leader of an organization is understanding that the buck stops with you. And don't get me wrong, there are situations where teams have a lot of autonomy to make decisions and such. But
Yeah.
I mean, if you're the boss, you're the boss. Own it. And sometimes that's great, but sometimes it's not.
I see. So this really leads to similar to RACI chart in our tech company. We have this accountable, responsible. So, and sounds like what you said is we need to have those kind of leadership mindset. I'm responsible for this. So I need to drive my team moving forward instead of complaining about the team.
Yes.
What other tactics or steps people need to learn to become a better leader nowadays?
I think, yeah, it's such a fantastic question. You have such good questions. One, I think curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're not leading with curiosity in everything you're doing, I can't see how you can be an effective leader. Because people are going to come to you with plans and options and ideas and thoughts. And if your first question isn't, why did they do this? What is this about? Like, if you don't go into it being inquisitive, you're not going to see the value of what they're bringing to you. And I just think it's really important to be curious. And that applies to if someone's having a really bad week, well, be curious about why. Like, what is going on with this person? Is their kid sick at home? Are they, whatever it might be. So, like, be curious with that. But I think the other side of that coin is you need to be accountable, and you need to hold people accountable.
Yeah.
And so when you think about leadership, it's nice to say, I want to mirror things. It's nice to say, I'm going to be curious about everything. But once you see, and this goes back to what I said earlier about acting, once you see that there is a problem, you need to address it. It's like you need to hold people accountable to what they are tasked with doing. And this, I think, for me, I think for people who are more empathetic, this is the most difficult part of being a CEO or being a leader of a team, is that there'll be times we need to let people go that you might personally like. And that's really hard. However, not letting them go will show to the rest of the team that you do not hold people accountable. And that's
Yeah.
very toxic. So that's hard. But those two, curiosity tied with accountability, I think are big ones.
Yeah, totally. I actually currently experiencing this. I let go people in my team, and also like there was an employee. It's crazy. So took me really long time to let her go. And before I went on maternity leave for my second kid, I had a full-time employee. After I came back, I have 5 because I let go a couple of them. And some of them were replaced by AI. Seriously, it's so funny. So some of the, not funny, sorry. It's literally, it is the evolution of AI. Some of the jobs were replaced by AI. We don't need them anymore. But some of them just like, I don't think you're performing. I don't know what you're doing. People literally was lying when I was on maternity leave, and pretending working but not real, and then you can see the record and not working, different things. Earlier, I had seen some kind of like personality trait. I'll be like, oh, I think he's not a good fit for the personality. And it's different things. I was always hoping things can improve. And this not just happened to one employee. It happened to multiple of my employees. There's lots of things going on. And I was new into entrepreneurship. So I didn't know how to deal with this. It actually took me a while to really let them go. But once the bad apples are gone, or the one doesn't have the right culture fit are gone, literally the entire team were way more efficient. We're all like knowing who is slacking, who is not slacking. It's a new way to really define leadership nowadays, because hiring is important and firing is also important skills as a leader.
Yeah, I mean, there's the old mantra: hire slow, fire fast.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough one, but and it's so complex. Like it really is complex, and I use that word intentionally because complicated indicates one solution, while complex indicates many solutions. And it's like you mentioned culture, like that.
Mm-hmm.
Even that is like a very complex topic.
Yeah.
creating the right culture at work. And I think like here's something I learned as
Mm-hmm.
leadership is like I'm empathetic as like a person. Like it's a curse sometimes. And I early on really wanted to create a family culture at Tech
Mm-hmm.
Goes Home. And it it became very clear early on though that many of the staff, especially staff who grew up in marginalized situations and from backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
that was very uncomfortable for them to think of it that way. And the other part of it is, and I learned this, is it's a lie. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you can't fire family members. You don't promote family members.
Oh.
Like, like if it were really if it were a family, I'd fire my brother or mother or father in a heartbeat. They'd probably fire me too. So we are here because we're contracted to be here. Our compensation is money. We don't live in the Star Trek society of like
Mm-hmm.
everyone gets free food and everyone loves everyone and all of that. And
Mm-hmm.
so being transparent and honest about that, it taught me a good lesson. It was just like, yes, we should all seek satisfaction from our jobs and satisfaction in the culture we create.
Mm-hmm.
But work should not be where you're getting your happiness from. That is where your family and your friends and your travels, and that is where that is from. And that
Mm-hmm.
was hard for me. That was hard for me. But as we grew, it became very clear to me it was the right decision at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how the growth part coming in. And actually I see a contract because before I do the full-time coaching, start my own coaching company, nowadays you can see I a small startup, but I was also managing really big team back at several Fortune 500 companies as a director of product. And I literally hire people, fire people, and just fast when you are in a large Fortune 500 companies and big corporation, I think your emotions are not tied up to be, hey, this is my family. We are here to do business. When you're running your own startup, especially those passion projects, to be frank, the product manager accelerator, this is my passion project. I started 4 other startups in the past. It's almost starting a business. This one was my passion project. And then somehow passion project took off. And but when it's a fashion project, you see it differently. You see employee differently. You see your like customers or your student differently. Yes, you see them as a family, and now you need to find a balance. What it takes to really manage your team more efficiently is a full business or with a passion, or is a the combo of both. So you can set the right culture. It's very different from like big Fortune 500 company culture. And also big takeaway for my audience today. If you work for startup, or work for a Fortune 500 company like Google or like a 10 people startup, 50 people startup, the culture will be different. And your definition of the happiness relationship with your coworkers will be different as well. Cool. And then this leads me to the next hot topic regarding hiring. And we talk about hiring, firing all the time. So how exactly does hiring works? For example, when you hire leaders in your organization, what are you looking for as a
Yeah, I
CEO from
think
your CEO perspective?
sure. I think there's the standard, like, you're looking for, good people who, love the mission, are bought in. I think those are the more obvious ones. I think a good leader needs to be humble and
Mhm.
say you're looking to hire people that are smarter than you. You're essentially hiring what would hopefully be your replacement as you move up or do other things. So don't you want to, replace your gig with someone who's better than you are? I think that's a great legacy to leave. So looking for people who are smarter.
Mhm.
I also think it's really important to not hire like
Mhm.
there's all these studies in the world that'll tell you if you get a group of people in the room, they'll gravitate towards people who are like them, who
Yeah.
like the same things. If I'm interviewing someone and he's a huge Boston Celtics fan, that there's no way it doesn't internally in me make me think, oh, like I could get along with that guy, blah blah blah. And so from my point of view, it's you want to look for those differences. Like what
Mhm.
skills does say we're hiring a woman for a leadership position. I'm like, all right, what can she do that I am clueless about?
Yeah.
Is she better at finances? Is she whatever it might be? Because you don't want to hire people who have the same skill set as you. I mean, there might
Mhm.
be some overlap here or there, but the whole point is to grow your org and increase knowledge. And so I think You hire people who are smarter than you, and you hire people who have other skills and other backgrounds. They may be from a different part of the country. They may have grown up differently than you. Like, there's so many amazing differences that we all have that can lead to incredible opportunities in a work environment. I don't think people should be, and I know that the political environment right now, I think some would disagree with me, but I think it's incredibly important to have a diverse team. And that's not just racially diverse, it's diversity across the board.
Yeah, diversity in terms of opinions out there. So what are the hiring tips you had for product leaders when they hire?
I would say, one, you've got to be organized. I mean, some of these things might be simple, but you need to have an organized system that is easy to use. So, like, making sure that you have consistent applications from people coming in, make sure that what you require is equal to everyone. Make sure that you have your cover letter, you have your resume, you have your whatever your work piece is. You want to have a solid committee of people to help make a decision. And I would strongly suggest that committee includes staff, not just leadership, because these are people who are going to be working with them. And if this is a position that has something to do with the community, have a community member on the hiring committee.
Mm.
Another thing that I think is relatively new, but I think is important, is toss out the college degree requirement. Like,
Wow.
we did that years ago, and I have found it has made no difference whatsoever. I do wonder how many people may have had, say, a bachelor's degree but not a master's, and did not apply for a job that would have been absolutely wonderful. I mean, I have a BA. I have nothing above that. I have no master's. I have no PhD. None of that. And I think I did okay with Tech Goes Home.
You
So
did
I would
fantastic.
I would say, like, unless it's like you need to have certain accounting certifications or something, I don't know about that. But there are coders going into Google and places like that have high school diplomas these days. So I think education's being turned on its head. And there was a second thing that now has escaped my brain of make sure that when you interview, ask all the interviewers the same questions. This annoys me when I read about this. It's like, how are you supposed to compare candidates if you ask them different questions? You need to have a rubric. You need to have your 10 questions or whatever it is. Ask them the same questions so you can at least have some way of with numbers, was that quantitative versus qualitative? You've got to be able to score people. Save the higher level crazy questions for the finalists or something like that. But ask everyone the same question so everyone's on the same playing field.
Wow. Bingo. And guess what? This is like crazy. So, this go back to regarding how to prepare for interview. No wonder I actually, when I start Product Manager Accelerator, and now we have like 5 different programs out there, AI Product Manager or Product Leaders, many different programs. But when I got started, I found out something quite interesting, which is I know the rule book was in many different companies through my connections. I know what they're looking for. I know there's a standard process, especially all the big tech company, Fortune 50 company like Google, Meta, and any tier 1 company on the rule book. And through my connections, I get access to the rule book. And then guess how I design the coaching program for my students, break into all the tier 1 companies. I reverse engineer the rule book. They're going to text you this and this and this. They always ask you the same type of questions. I got the list of, through my connections, a list of popular asked questions. And then they have this checklist what they're going to ask for you and in the interview. And then I reverse engineer what they need to say in the interview and create my own like framework, like Gucci framework, my computer science PhD framework, different kind of frameworks. Even I pass those interview. It was because I asked you the same questions, like crazy. Yet now I know why. And at the time I was like, why you ask those questions again and again? Or there's a pattern goes in the questions. Why the same thing was because you guys want to compare candidates using the same questions. Would lead to a hack on my company. This is like crazy, impressive. Now all the dots connected. By the way, for all my audience, if you're interested in knowing the top 50 commonly asked product management interview questions, you can go to the link of the show note, go to the website and download those questions. So I have the entire rule book, popular asked questions we're going to ask, what kind of framework to use. Go to the link of the website and download those top 50 interviewing questions for product managers out there.
Very smart. Very smart.
Cool. So, Dan, let's talk about scalability. And, you have seen the growth for Techo's Home from like 1 people, 2 people, 3 people. Nowadays, you have like 35 employees. You also grew to a larger number, also like scale down based on our conversation last time. Can you tell us regarding scalabilities, regarding how to scale an organization, grow your team, grow your client, grow your service, grow everything? Tell us more.
The first word I'm going to use is patience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is hard. It takes a long time. It is a slog. You will have conversations in the beginning that won't bear fruit for years to come. So don't go into it thinking, oh, I'm going to have 6 conversations and then 6 weeks later, we're going to be twice the size and we're going to be doing this and this and this and that. If you're going to do it right, it takes a long time. It will probably take twice as long as you think it will take. That's probably the best way to look at it. I think anyone looking to scale, you need to think about the communities that you're serving first. Now, if it's a product, it's obviously who's buying the communities or who's using those communities. I mean, who's using those products. On the nonprofit side, it's like who you're serving, what are you doing for them? You really need to see what is the demand, like what is driving the demand for what you are going to offer. Trying to scale something that there's no demand for is not going to work. I've seen that many times with people who just think they're going to, oh, something happened, I'm going to start, this is really nice, I'm going to do this. And then they realize that, the government pays everyone to do it. So there's no one else to help. Early relationships. This is another one that I think is super important, is your first year. If you want to scale something, your first year will be spent having 45 million coffees. I mean, get ready for a caffeine addiction, because you're going to need to meet with everyone you could possibly think of to get advice, to poke, to prod, to see who can work with. I mean, if you need to hire teams, you're going to meet with lots of different people. If you need to, get into different conventions and all the different places that you go where there's lots of people, and so much of that is relationships. I go to conferences all the time, and while I really appreciate like the actual agendas of the conferences, the best part of the conferences is the off time where you just meet people and talk to people, and you learn about what are they doing, how can we work together. So I think once you get that going, once you start with that foundation, then it's the slow slog of saying, okay, we're going to do some pilots here and here. And this is another point that I really want to emphasize, is I don't think organizations, whether private or nonprofit, do enough with evaluation. You shouldn't say, I'm going to go to these 3 places and then go. What you should do is say, I'm going to go to these 3 places, evaluate them, and then say which ones I should keep going with.
Yeah.
Because you'll end up spinning your wheels over and over again on something that just isn't going to work. I struggled with this when we first expanded outside of Boston. So Techo's Home was exclusively Boston, only Boston up until 2011, 12, 13, something like that. That's a long time ago. I can't remember now.
Yeah.
And we decided we were going to expand to Cambridge, which is where Harvard, MIT, and all them are. But one of the misconceptions about Cambridge is that half of all kids in Cambridge public schools live in public housing. So Cambridge actually has a very high low income rate of families. So we're like, let's go. It took us 3 years just to get our first course running because we didn't do it right. We went from the top. We met with the mayor. We met with the head of this association. We met with the head of this corporation. We ignored what made TGH grow in the beginning, which was a group of families within a school saying they want to solve a problem. We ignored that because we were like, hey, we're better now. And what eventually worked was we completely switched and we said, well, let's walk into this community center and talk to someone. Let's walk into this school and talk to someone.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it was the community centers and it was the schools. It was the people on the ground that were helping us build up the demand for TGH. So I don't think there's a perfect recipe for anything, but I do think having patience, thinking about your audience, making sure what you're doing is what they need, and then continuously building relationships over the years. I mean, I can think of a funder of ours. We had so this could be like an investor, for example, for you all. First time we met, they gave us $10,000, which at the time for us was amazing.
Yeah.
And then, last year they gave us $250,000.
Nice.
And so you can see how that,
Yeah.
it took a while, but we're at that point now where we're talking about 6-figure gifts as opposed to $10,000.
Exactly. I hope sometime in the future I can go into those categories of six-figure gifts as well. We're kind of right now, but you guys actually did a good job maintaining those relationship with all the like donors and trying to like continue to involve with you guys
Yes.
and try to like push you guys or help you guys to grow in many different ways. This is awesome. And especially something that actually resonates with product management, which is getting access to your users, right? Similar to our building MVP, minimum viable product, and also find out your early adopters, interview with them, which is the methodology of getting access to users, conduct with custom interview where you find those people. Frequently inside a Product Manager Accelerator, my student always asks, hey, Nancy, I'm building a portfolio and interview with the customers. Where can I find them? Then give them different ideas, Facebook groups, different groups, and all different we'll even go to schools. When we interview people for the free AI PM bootcamp that we run through our PMA Kids nonprofit, I have volunteered literally go to high school students, like the high school outside the schools, at the gate where kids just leave the school. They were just like, okay, so I want to do voice customer interviews. First of all, some clarifying questions, and if you pass the clarifying question regarding the audience we want to interview, I'll give you $20. So people literally go into schools to conduct voice customers interviews as well, which is going back to what you said, that getting access to the users to understand where they're coming from and the initial stage of growing their companies. Awesome. Great, cool. To conduct voice customers interviews as well, which is going back to what you said, that getting access to the users to understand where they're coming from and the initial stage of growing their companies. Awesome. Great, cool. And Daniel, today you share with us so much a great insight regarding leadership, growing company, and hiring people as well. Now I have a question regarding yourself, right? So let's talk about the importance of investing in yourself. So what resources do you use to grow yourself professionally or personally? Because I'm a big believer of growth mindset, invest in myself, continue to learn. I believe life is a school, so continue learning. So what resources do you use to invest in yourself? Or do you believe in the concept of investing in yourself, growth mindset?
Oh yeah, I believe in it, and I have to get hit over the head sometimes to do it because we're all so busy. But I do definitely believe in it. I think there are 3 things that I'd recommend. One is very specific to me, but the first one is coaching, and more coaching. If you can get Nancy here as your coach, fantastic. If you can get some, you being CEO, or I can only speak to being a CEO, but it's very lonely. It is very lonely. Having someone who can be non-judgmental, give you honest feedback, that isn't afraid of getting fired because they're saying what they're saying to you.
Yeah.
I think that it took me a long time to realize that was something I wanted. And as soon as I got it, I wish I had had it years earlier.
Wow.
And if you can find, there's so many great ones out there. It's a matter, obviously, of finding the right fit for what you want. My recommendation is to think about what is the most challenging aspect of your job, and there's the coach that you want. You don't want a coach that's just a yes person affirming everything you're doing. Find someone that can really push you to make you better, I think is key. The next one for everyone is take time off. Unless someone listening to this is holding the nuclear codes for the United States of America, you are not that important that you can't take 2 weeks off. Like, it is such this martyr complex that CEOs have, especially, that the world will fall apart if I am gone for 2 weeks, is just BS. If you have done a good job, if you have done a good job hiring your team, they will be excited for you to go away for a little bit. And this is the added benefit of this, is when you are away, especially if you can do like 2-3 weeks, something more than just a week, you'll come back and you will see who stepped up. It is a great way to test and see who on your staff have leadership abilities, because they will fill that void. And then that just gives you a sight to a different career path for someone, maybe like, you didn't know before. The last thing I would say, and this was for me when I think about the coaching and development, is, I'm a middle-aged white guy. I grew up in, white middle-class family. I went to a school that was predominantly white. When I first worked at Fenway High School, it was like eyes wide open. I was like, this is the first time I've ever been in an environment where I wasn't in the majority. And the 10 years I worked in Boston schools was the most educational experience of my life. I would like to think that I taught just a fraction of what the students taught me, which was amazing. And so when I think about my professional development, so many of them were about things like, how do we navigate in this white supremacist culture? How do we, how do we activate the power within, Black women leaders? How do we create policies at organizations that support young Black and brown employees? And so those were really important to me. And so here's a very simple example of that, is that there's all these studies that show that young Black and Latin men and women do not save for retirement, and young white people do. And so I'm sure there's a billion reasons why, but I didn't have time to fix that. So what we did at Techosoma is we just said, all right, 5% of your salary is going to go to retirement, whether you give or not. So it was a pretty small change. I mean, 5% of it's a big number, but not massive. But what it did is it said, okay, everyone on this team is going to put money away for their future, no matter who they are. You can put more if you want, but a minimum of 5. So just it helped me make decisions like that. So anyway, so coaching is really important. Taking time off is incredibly important. I recommend at least 2 weeks at a time. You don't really you can't turn your brain off after a week. You need to. And then focusing on those professional development opportunities that are most relevant to what you need. And that will be different across the board.
This is awesome. Thank you for sharing so much wisdom. And I totally resonate with all three things, and especially taking time off. And I was so burned out last year. That's right. I need it, and also encourage all my students and everyone, like people working tech companies nowadays. It's like some kind of layoff going on. People are like working really hard because they're afraid themselves getting layoffs. They don't take time off. I think it's time to do some self-care and do it in different ways as well. And my New Year's resolution is to stand-up comedy show. I've told you that because I opened out last year.
That's amazing. When are you doing this, and how are you inviting everyone?
I'm gonna make an announcement. We get invited. Gonna do it in Boston this summer. Coming up to Boston this summer again, and then do it in Miami as well. I wrote a script. Well, hopefully people laugh.
So excited about this. This is gonna be so fun. This is gonna be so amazing.
Thank you. We shall see. Hope people laugh. If it's not funny, you pretend laughing anyway. Okay, that's my friend.
No, I'm laughing. I'm the empathizer. I'll be out there screaming, laughing the whole time.
Awesome. Yeah. So Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. Let me ask you a final question. How can people follow you? Where can they connect with you?
Sure. So I've got a website, which is just danielnoyes.com. And you can email me at dan@danielnoyes.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. So if you just search for Daniel Noyes on LinkedIn, I will pop up there as well.
This is awesome. Yeah, everybody, we're going to put Daniel's contact in the description of the show note as well. And Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. And everybody, if you find this show very insightful, very inspiring, and also got lots of good insight regarding growing your leadership, make sure to like, comment, and share this episode with anybody you think is on the track to become a product leader. And this is Dr. Nancy Lee from PM Accelerator. And also make sure to download our top 50 product management interview questions database. And we're going to see you in our next episode right here. Thank you for joining us, Daniel. Awesome.